We just surpassed 16,000 miles on our Model 3 rear-wheel drive, creeping up towards that 1-year mark, and I'm happy to say it's been boring. Like, there's not a whole lot to report on other than the fact that it works. In my personal opinion, the Model 3 rear-wheel drive is everything a electric car should be, which for a lot of people, yeah, that may be lacking of character, lacking of a complex interior, all the bells and whistles. No, it just kind of works. And that's what I appreciate the most in technology, when it knows its job, so it does its job well. Why are we switching to electric vehicles in the first place? Because of efficiency. EVs use substantially less energy than gas vehicles do, even when they are charged completely from a dirty grid. And I think in a lot of ways, the Model 3 is the best Tesla you can buy, factoring in cost, because now that we know it qualifies for the full $7,500 tax credit, it is substantially cheaper than pretty much any other Tesla. And with state rebates, you're closing in on $30,000 after incentives. That's undercutting like Camrys and the Prius and even some Corollas, depending on what your dealer markups are in your region. But it may not have the most luxurious features like a 400-mile range or an active cooled seat or a swiveling display or even a driver display, if you can consider that a luxury feature. But I think what the Model 3 nails and what Tesla has carried on as well to the Model Y is perceived luxury. And I think that's what I appreciate about the Model 3 is without it being an insanely expensive vehicle, it still can kind of come across as fairly luxurious because Tesla had such a minimalistic approach to the interior. So the materials themselves are not super high-end, but just the way they're implemented makes them feel more unique, makes it feel more high-end. And of course, where most of the money went, I think, in that interior is the display, because that's carrying the software. Marquez Brownlee mentioned on the most recent episode of Hot Ones that what most people tend to under-prioritize when making a vehicle purchase is the importance of software. That's something you interact with pretty much every time you get in and out of the car. And a lot of automakers for basically decades have always kind of just taken a backseat on software. They don't try very hard. They don't really want to emulate what more modern UI, UX designers are doing with our smartphones and computers and tablets. Tesla, in my opinion, doesn't have futuristic software. They just have modern software. It's just on par with what we already have with our other devices, and everybody else just feels left behind. And sure, designing your own operating system from the ground up with all these settings and customizations, that's definitely gotten better since I've taken delivery of the car, and as a tech guy, it's not as terribly impressive as I guess it was a few years ago, because again, the car is just kind of boring, just like your old phone, your laptop, or your tablet. You're used to it updating and getting new features with time. So of course, my car is a big computer on wheels. It's got a big battery pack. That should also get better with time. That should gain some more functionality. Yes, I'm absolutely taking it for granted for sure, but the fact that Tesla has more of a software emphasis than anybody else on the market is, I think, why I have a hard time recommending anything else, because not only is the software functional and practical for your day-to-day needs, but it's also just pleasant to look at compared to all of the other dated techniques that legacy automakers do. And because they're so bad at it, they tend to just fall back on CarPlay or Android Auto. Sure, I'm not here to say that's a bad idea. It's definitely a quicker, more efficient means to getting a decent UI. In my opinion, it's still not better than just designing your own in-house one from the ground up, which is what Tesla has done, similar to the charging network, which is why this may change in the future as more and more EVs are switching to NACS. But at least right now, if you're in the market for a vehicle, you can't get a more simpler refueling or recharging experience than you can with a Tesla. There's really not much to document. It's kind of boring. Like I said, you just kind of show up at these chargers, which are already accounted for and checked in on through the Tesla's display. You just stop, you plug in, you charge. It tells you how long to charge for, and then you go about your journey. Even most gas cars don't accommodate for that kind of trip planning and trip timing with their in-route navigations, because they don't know how many gas pumps are available. They don't know if that gas station is online or not. But with Tesla, because they designed the charging network and the car and the operating system, you really can't beat the simplicity of that experience. So all of those things I mentioned are pretty much things you can get in all Teslas. But the reason I mention that in this Model 3 longer term review is because you don't need to buy a Model Y or a Model S or X to access all of those essential essential features. And what I'm here to tell you after nearly a year of ownership is that for the most part, most people are just using their vehicles for commuting or for basic grabbing some food, grabbing some groceries, and just getting where you need to go. I know there's some exceptions out there, but for the most part, the Model 3 can cover, in my opinion, the vast majority of Americans' use case for a car. Sure, it's a sedan and it's the only Tesla that's not a hatchback, but make no mistake, this thing has a ton of storage capacity, and I'm well aware that most people are not driving around their car with 4 to 5 people in it at all times. Sure, the Model 3's got the second row if you need it, but for the most part, there's a ton of room in the back and still 2 seats up front for you and your partner or you and a passenger. I have still not come to a point in all these months of ownership where I'm like, oh crap, the Model 3 can't fit this much. No, we've gone on big trips and stuffed the frunk, stuffed the trunk and the sub-trunk, and still had space left over on the interior. Like, it is still an incredibly practical car despite being much smaller than most other Teslas on the road, but I think it's absolutely worth the small trade-off of not having a hatchback to save yourself thousands and thousands of dollars but still get inside the Tesla ecosystem so that you can benefit from the in-house designed operating system and you can benefit from the supercharger network, which is unmatched by gas or electric vehicles. And like I said earlier, the entire reason we're switching to EVs is efficiency, and if that's the whole point of making the transition to an electric car, then I feel like you can't really go any better than with a Model 3 rear-wheel drive because it's the most efficient Tesla they make. It's the only Tesla that has a curb weight under 4,000 pounds. And by the way, that's with a lithium iron phosphate battery pack. So at least in the United States, this is exclusive to the Model 3 rear-wheel drive, which allows you to charge it to 100% every single day. And that points back to this thesis that I've been pushing from the beginning. It's boring. You know, with most other Teslas that are going to have nickel-based battery packs, you got to remember, oh yeah, well that's your maximum range, but over a few years that'll degrade more, and you really only want to charge it to 80% for daily driving, but for a trip you can go to 100, but some people go to 70 or some people go to 90. Nope, none of that techie, nerdy stuff with LFP. It's got double the cycle life of most battery packs, which means it's not going to degrade as quickly, and you can charge it to 100% as many times as you want. You don't have to think about the percentages. What's your daily charge limit? What do you set it to? Who cares? Just let it go to full. It's no big deal. Again, it's kind of boring, but I think the negative association the tech community has with boring is that means the product is somehow bad, where I fundamentally disagree. I think a lot of technology can be boring and can be unchanged simply because it works. There's not really a need or a desire for a lot of people to have a product that is drastically different or completely rethought compared to their last product. No, I think the whole concept of switching to an electric car from a gasoline-powered car, that's already different enough. And I feel like Tesla has kind of the Ron Swanson approach of building an electric car. Like, you've seen Ron Swanson do the cook-off between Chris Traeger, where Ron is just trying to make a hamburger and make a point that beef tastes better than turkey beef, and Chris Traeger's trying really, really hard to make this turkey burger, and then Ron doesn't really do anything. He doesn't put any toppings on the burger. He just goes, there's meat on a bun, it tastes good, try it out. And in their cook-off, everybody chose the hamburger over the turkey burger. And that's kind of the story with Tesla. Like, they didn't feel the need to push a bunch of bells and whistles other than little software tricks like fart mode or boombox or Tesla Theater and those kinds of things, which are great. But as far as like the actual hardware goes in the car, Tesla's just like, here, it's a battery pack, you can drive it and it charges. It works. It doesn't do anything like super amazingly. It's just affordable and it will get you where you need to go more efficiently than any other gas vehicle could, and probably most other electric vehicles on the road. And yeah, that's why it's so popular. It just works. People don't need to be amazed and impressed by some kind of game-changing innovative tech every time they get in their car. They just want it to function. And I think that's what a lot of people like about Teslas. It's not trying to necessarily convince them that the car should be so much more than it really is. No, it just functions. But if you want there to be more, if you want to be impressed by more innovative or future tech, then I suppose the Tesla does still have some stuff for you there, like the in-house designed browser, the much larger display that can play video games. I don't use that all too much, although I do use Tesla Theater quite a bit. I gotta admit, it's pretty refreshing and nice that whenever you're stopped charging somewhere, you can just pull up a YouTube video and watch movies or TV shows or just your favorite content creators on there. And also there's the self-driving tech. So in my opinion, that's probably what is the weakest side of the Tesla experience, is all of the promises surrounding self-driving are exciting, and Tesla has this tendency to make it always feel like it's just around the corner. There's gonna be an update and suddenly the car is gonna drive drive itself, and then we wait, and then we wait, and then we wait. Now, some of you may be willing to drop the $200 a month or the $15,000 up front, and you will have access to, in my opinion, the best self-driving system that you can actually buy and own. However, I think most people that have suddenly gotten an interest in the Model 3 are the ones that have found the affordability to suddenly become a lot more reasonable. Now, with the $7,500 credit on a $40,000 vehicle and then some state rebates, bring that down to much more reasonably priced, making the $25,000 Tesla seem not that far out of reach, or honestly not that different. Yeah, those people who are just now able to afford a Model 3, I'm anticipating they're not buying this car for the self-driving technology. Yeah, Autopilot works decently, but it's definitely been the point of most tension whenever we take a long road trip, because the basic free version of Autopilot you get, it'll keep you between the lines, but every time a lane opens up, the car wants to drift and it can't decide where it wants to end up, so you have to deactivate it. And yes, it will slow down for cars in front of you and speed up when they move along, but oftentimes I end up just turning it off anytime I can see stops up ahead, because the car doesn't slow down as early as I would feel comfortable, and it has to really slam on the brakes at the last second. I've never really felt like it's actually going to crash. I just always feel like it's going to wait way too late until it actually starts hitting the brakes, and then everybody in the vehicle feels uncomfortable. So it's great for those long stretches of highway when not much is going on. I do use it, I do appreciate it, but yeah, there's definitely a ton of times where I'm like, really? We couldn't fix this after 4 years? And the truth is, Tesla has fixed a lot of those problems, but they've just paywalled all of the solutions, and I don't really love that business model. So the nice part is there is a subscription, so you can check it out when you're feeling daring, but I feel like most of you now buying the Model 3 rear-wheel drive aren't doing it for the self-driving tech. You're probably buying it for the affordability, in which case, not only is the upfront price way better than anyone else can offer, but also the cost to own is way better because of its low energy consumption. My lifetime efficiency is now sitting around 236 watt hours per mile. When I first got it, I was accustomed to driving like 75 miles per hour everywhere, but then I started realizing, wait a minute, I can save a lot more energy by kind of cruising at the lower speeds. So for the past couple thousand miles, I've actually worked it down to better than the EPA estimate at under 220 watt hours per mile. And there's still occasions where I'm able to get it under 200 watt hours per mile. Granted, it's not super common, but still, that's when you're surpassing the 5 miles per kilowatt hour zone, which is basically unheard of in automotive transport. It's really rare to see, but the Model 3 can do it, and I love those rides. And yes, with the Model 3 rear-wheel drive, there's like a partial premium sound system instead of the immersive audio package, which is what you get with pretty much all other Teslas. But after nearly a year of listening to the stereo on this thing, I gotta admit, it still sounds amazing. I'm sure the immersive audio is just a little bit better, but honestly, I think most people out there that want a Tesla have never spent this much money on a car before, and they're probably watching a lot of YouTubers telling them, you need to get the long range, or you need to get the Model Y, or if you're really serious about Tesla, you gotta buy a Model S or X. And if you've got the bank account to afford those cars, all the better to you. I'm happy for you, but personally, I think because of how practical and how efficient the Model 3 is and how much lower price it is, like, I understand the desire to want to go electric. You don't want to pay for gas anymore. I'm totally there with you. Don't price yourself out of the purchase entirely. I think that a lot of gatekeeping goes on in the community and convinces people that they have to get XYZ package in order for it to be worth it, and you price it so high that you go, I just can't swing it. And I was on that fence for a long time too, whether or not to go with the Y or go with the 3, or should we go with the long range, or can we get by with the standard range? And I'm trying to tell you now that on a full charge, Model 3 rear-wheel drive can still drive well over 3 hours at highway speed, and after that long, you probably want to take a break anyway. So yes, you can live comfortably, you can do lots of road trips with the standard range Model 3. The sound system is still amazing, the storage space is still huge, the seats are super duper comfortable, and in my opinion, you get plenty of range for the money. And once you start driving around in an EV, I think you'll start to realize that it's the charging network and the charging speeds that matter a heck of a lot more than your maximum range number. Especially with the economic crisis we're in right now, with interest rates skyrocketing and inflation affecting the cost of living all the time, I don't think we all need to convince ourselves to drop as much money as possible on our next vehicle. If anything, I would prefer all of you guys be swayed more towards getting a more affordable Tesla, maybe even used, so that you can make the switch to electric without breaking the bank. And of course, a great way to celebrate that is with some free supercharging miles, so feel free to use the referral code down below if you want to get 500 miles of free supercharging, or just some free Tesla accessories. It's your choice when you order your car. And to other people out there that have been driving around the rear-wheel drive Model 3 for a while, feel free to let me know down in the comments comments below, what are you most enjoying about it? What do you like? What do you not like? But personally, for most of the people I know that bought the Model 3 LFP, they've all loved it. I don't see a lot of people regretting it, saying, oh man, I wish I would have got the long range. Obviously, I'm not home right now, and I'm away from my car for an extended time, and I'm realizing how much I take that thing for granted. The gas cars we're riding around in out here are noisy, they're bumpy, and they rev up a lot and make a ton of noise, and it sucks. I've been spoiled by my boring Model 3. May not be the flashiest, fanciest thing out there, but I still honestly love the thing, and I'm curious to see, as a sedan fan, what Tesla has in store for Project Highland, but I still think the one that they're offering today is of tremendous value, and likely when they refresh it, there's going to be a price hike along with that, and there may be some changes like no more gear stocks that people get annoyed by. So yes, Tesla makes their vehicles better with time, but also worse with time, which is why, in my opinion, when's the best time to buy a Tesla? It's when you are financially ready to, and the product offering is good enough to fit your needs. And I think the Model 3 rear-wheel drive is still more than enough for what most people really need out of a car. So thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.